Something extraordinary happened this week that three legendary seers predicted with chilling accuracy. The U.S. Department of Justice just released over 3 million pages of the Epstein files, the largest document dump in modern history. Peter Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party after documents revealed £55,000 in payments from Jeffrey Epstein. Prince Andrew quietly left Royal Lodge amid renewed scrutiny, and this is just the beginning. But here's what will shock you. Jeane Dixon predicted in 1995 that 2026 would be the year when secrets buried for decades surface like oil on water. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, described visions of the great unveiling when those who hid in shadows are brought to light. And Nostradamus, in his most cryptic quatrains, wrote about the time when truth breaks through stone walls and even kings must answer for their darkness. Three different seers from three different centuries all saw the same pattern. 2026 as the year of unprecedented revelations. Not just one scandal, but a systematic exposure of hidden truths that would shake the foundations of power structures worldwide. This isn't coincidence. This is prophecy manifesting exactly as they predicted. And what's happening with these document releases is only the surface. According to these seers, we're entering what they called the Great Disclosure, a period when humanity's collective shadow work begins in earnest, when secrets can no longer remain hidden, when truth becomes the only currency that matters. But here's the deeper truth they all understood. External revelations always mirror internal awakenings. As these hidden documents surface, something in your own psyche is also being illuminated. As power structures become transparent, you're being called to examine your own hidden patterns. This isn't just about powerful people being exposed. It's about you discovering what you've been hiding from yourself. If you feel called to understand these deeper patterns, to see beyond the headlines into the spiritual significance of our times, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will completely transform how you understand disclosure, truth, and your own awakening process. Before diving into exactly what these seers predicted about 2026, you need to understand why their prophecies about revelations are so consistently accurate. Truth has its own timeline, its own rhythm, its own inevitable emergence. What these mystics could see was not the specific details of scandals, but the cosmic cycles that govern how secrets surface and consciousness evolves. Jeane Dixon understood what she called the transparency cycles, periods in history when hidden information becomes impossible to suppress. She identified these cycles as occurring roughly every 30 to 40 years, but said the 2000s would be different. This decade, she predicted, would see the greatest unveiling in human history, because humanity was finally ready to process truths that would have destroyed civilizations in earlier eras. In her private journals, published after her death, Dixon wrote, "The children of the new millennium will demand truth like their ancestors demanded bread. They will not tolerate deception from leaders, institutions, or themselves, and in 2026, that demand will be met with such force that even the most carefully guarded secrets will be revealed." Edgar Cayce approached it from a different angle. In his readings from the 1930s and 40s, he described what he called the Great Cleansing, a period when humanity would face its shadow material collectively. He saw this as essential for spiritual evolution, saying that no soul can ascend while carrying unhealed secrets, and no civilization can evolve while built on hidden foundations. Cayce specifically mentioned that this cleansing would accelerate in the 2000s, reaching a peak around 2026 to 2027. He described it as a time when institutions built on deception will crumble, not through external attack, but through internal exposure. The light will shine from within, and darkness will have nowhere to hide. And Nostradamus, in his characteristic symbolic language, wrote about what scholars now interpret as the digital age of disclosure. In Century 8, Quatrain 15, he describes metal birds carrying messages across the world, revealing the sins of princes and priests. In Century 10, Quatrain 42, he speaks of the time when paper and light will bring down towers of deception. What's remarkable is that all three seers saw this revelation period not as destructive, but as necessary for human evolution. They understood that consciousness cannot advance while living in denial, that societies cannot heal while secrets fester in darkness. Now let's examine how current events are manifesting these prophecies with mathematical precision. The Epstein file release represents something unprecedented in scope and timing. Over 3 million pages of documents, emails, financial records, and testimonies released simultaneously across multiple jurisdictions, making suppression impossible. But notice the pattern. This isn't just about one case. Peter Mandelson's resignation signals that the exposure is spreading through political networks. Prince Andrew's quiet departure from Royal Lodge suggests the royal family is preparing for deeper revelations. Similar document releases are reportedly being prepared in multiple countries. Dixon predicted this exact pattern. She wrote that the revelations of 2026 would cascade like dominoes, one exposure triggering another, until the entire structure of hidden power becomes visible. She saw it starting with one major case that would open floodgates that can never be closed. What we're witnessing matches her vision perfectly. The Epstein files aren't just exposing one network. They're creating a template for transparency that other institutions will be forced to follow. Congressional investigations, media scrutiny, public pressure, all amplified by technologies that make information impossible to suppress. But here's where the prophecies get even more specific. Casey predicted that the Great Cleansing would begin with those who harmed the innocent, expand to those who corrupted institutions, and culminate with each soul examining its own hidden darkness. We're clearly in Phase 1, approaching Phase 2. Nostradamus described this progression in his famous quatrain about the eagle's nest being cleansed. Scholars interpret the eagle as America, but the cleansing pattern applies globally. First, individual corruption exposed. Then, systemic corruption revealed. Finally, collective shadow work begins. This brings us to the most important aspect of these prophecies, why they're happening now in 2026, and what it means for your personal awakening. All three seers understood that external revelations serve a deeper purpose. They force internal reckonings. And Dixon wrote that the disclosure period would coincide with the greatest spiritual awakening in human history. She saw the two as inseparable. When humanity sees clearly how deception has shaped their world, they will demand truth in every area of life, including from themselves. This is already happening. The same generation consuming these document releases is also the generation embracing therapy, shadow work, psychedelic healing, and authentic self-expression. The same people demanding transparency from institutions are demanding honesty from their relationships, careers, and inner lives. Casey called this the law of corresponding revelation, as above, so below. As hidden power structures become visible, hidden psychological patterns also surface. As institutions face their shadow material, individuals confront their own repressed truths. And here's where it gets personal. If you're drawn to these stories, if you feel compelled to understand these revelations, it's because your own psyche is preparing for disclosure. Your soul is using external transparency as permission to examine internal deceptions. What secrets have you been keeping from yourself? What truths have you been avoiding? What patterns have you been hiding behind comfortable lies? The same cosmic force exposing powerful networks is also illuminating your own unconscious material. This isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. Casey taught that every soul must face its shadow to find its light. The revelation period we're living through is giving you permission, even compelling you to do that work. But the seers also provided guidance for navigating this disclosure period consciously. They understood that revelation without wisdom becomes destructive, that truth without compassion becomes weaponized, that exposure without healing perpetuates trauma. Dixon's first instruction: seek truth to heal, not to harm. She warned that the revelation period would create two types of people: those who use disclosed information for growth and those who use it for revenge. Choose healing, she wrote, because truth revealed in anger serves only darkness. This applies to how you consume these revelations and how you approach your own shadow work. Are you reading these documents to understand and heal, or to judge and condemn? Are you examining your own hidden patterns to grow or to punish yourself? Casey's guidance was even more specific. In times of great revealing, become a lighthouse, not a storm. He saw that revelation periods create chaos, and conscious souls must provide stability. Your job isn't to amplify the drama, but to model how truth can be processed with dignity and wisdom. Practically, this means maintaining discernment about what you consume. Not every revelation needs your attention. Not every scandal deserves your energy. Focus on disclosures that help you understand power, heal trauma, or expand consciousness. Ignore information that only feeds outrage or voyeurism. Nostradamus offered perhaps the most profound guidance. When masks fall, do not mourn the faces, celebrate the truth. He understood that revelation periods are grieving periods. We mourn our innocence, our illusions, our trust in institutions we believed were benevolent. This grief is sacred. Honor it. Don't rush to anger or cynicism. Allow yourself to feel the sadness of discovering how much deception has shaped your world. Then ask, what truth is being revealed that serves my awakening? Here's where the prophecies reveal their ultimate purpose. The revelation period isn't meant to destroy faith in everything. It's meant to redirect faith toward what's actually trustworthy. When false structures crumble, authentic foundations become visible. Dixon predicted that after the Great Disclosure, people would turn from external authorities to internal wisdom, from institutional guidance to intuitive knowing. She saw this not as spiritual bypassing, but as spiritual maturation, humanity finally taking responsibility for its own consciousness. And Casey described it as the time when each soul becomes its own prophet, when people stop outsourcing their truth to experts and institutions and begin trusting their own connection to source. The revelation period forces this transition by showing how often external authorities have failed us. But this doesn't mean becoming cynical or paranoid. It means developing discernment, learning to sense truth directly rather than believing it secondhand, trusting your inner knowing while remaining open to new information. The seers also predicted what would emerge after the disclosure period completes. Dixon saw institutions rebuilt on transparency, leaders chosen for integrity rather than charisma, systems designed for service rather than control. She predicted this transformation would be complete by 2030. Casey envisioned a new form of governance based on wisdom councils rather than power hierarchies, and educational systems that teach consciousness development alongside practical skills. He saw the revelation period as clearing space for these evolved structures. Nostradamus, characteristically cryptic, wrote about the time after the great unveiling when truth needs no defenders because it defends itself. He saw a world where deception becomes impossible because consciousness has evolved beyond the need for it. But all three seers emphasized the same crucial point. This transformation happens soul by soul, choice by choice. The revelation period provides information, but individuals must choose what to do with it. You can use these disclosures to become more paranoid, more cynical, more disconnected from trust. Or you can use them to become more discerning, more authentic, more committed to truth in your own life. You can let the exposure of corruption confirm your worst beliefs about humanity. Or you can see it as evidence that consciousness is evolving, that secrets can no longer be maintained, that truth is becoming more powerful than deception. This is the real prophecy, and it's fulfilling itself through you. Every time you choose truth over comfort in your personal life, you contribute to the disclosure field. Every time you demand authenticity from your relationships, you weaken deception's hold on consciousness. Every time you examine your own shadow material instead of projecting it onto others, you participate in the Great Cleansing, the Epstein files, the political resignations, the institutional exposures. These are symptoms of a deeper process. Consciousness is demanding transparency at every level, from global power structures to individual psychological patterns. And here's what the seers saw coming next. Dixon predicted that Phase 2 of the revelations would begin in late 2026, focusing on financial systems built on deception and spiritual institutions that betrayed their trust. She saw this phase as more personally relevant because it would affect everyone's daily life. Casey described visions of economic structures crumbling as their hidden foundations are revealed, but emphasized this would lead to new forms of exchange based on actual value rather than artificial scarcity. He saw the financial revelations as clearing space for abundance-based rather than scarcity-based systems. Nostradamus wrote about the time when false gold is revealed as dust and real treasure is found in unity and wisdom. His financial prophecies suggest that revelation of current system corruption will lead to completely different approaches to value and exchange. But the most important phase, according to all three seers, is Phase 3, the spiritual reckonings. This is when the revelation process turns fully inward, when individuals stop waiting for external institutions to provide meaning and begin accessing it directly. Dixon called this the Great Awakening that follows the Great Disclosure. She predicted it would begin around 2027 and fundamentally change how humans relate to consciousness, purpose, and each other. Casey saw it as the return to remembering, humanity remembering its spiritual nature, its connection to Source, its responsibility for conscious evolution. He predicted this remembering would happen naturally as external authorities lost credibility. So, what does this mean for you, practically, right now? First, understand that you're living through one of the most significant transitions in human consciousness. The revelation period you're witnessing isn't just political or social, it's spiritual. It's humanity growing up, taking responsibility, demanding truth. Second, use this time for your own disclosure work. What have you been hiding from yourself? What truths have you been avoiding? What patterns need illumination? The cosmic energy supporting global transparency also supports personal honesty. Third, develop discernment about information consumption. Not every revelation serves your growth. Not every scandal deserves your attention. Focus on disclosures that expand understanding rather than feeding outrage. Fourth, practice holding truth with compassion. The revelation period can create harshness, judgment, us versus them thinking. Your job is to model how truth can be spoken with love, how accountability can happen without cruelty. Fifth, prepare for the rebuilding phase. As old structures based on deception crumble, new ones based on transparency will emerge. What skills, wisdom, or gifts do you have to offer this reconstruction? The prophecies are clear. This revelation period is temporary, but its effects are permanent. We're living through humanity's adolescent phase, messy, painful, necessary. The secrets being exposed now have always been there, but consciousness wasn't ready to process them. Now it is. Ben Dixon's final prediction about the revelation period was hopeful. When the great disclosure completes, humanity will wonder how it ever lived with so much deception. Truth will feel natural, secrets will feel impossible, and consciousness will have evolved beyond the need for hidden power. Casey saw it similarly. After the cleansing, souls will relate to each other with unprecedented authenticity. The masks will seem not just unnecessary but absurd. Love will flow freely because fear will have no shadows to hide behind. And Nostradamus, in his most optimistic quatrain, wrote, "When all veils fall, the face of divinity is revealed in every countenance. The time of pretending ends, and the era of truth begins. You are living through the fulfillment of prophecies that seers have anticipated for decades. The document releases. Political resignations, institutional exposures, all evidence that consciousness can no longer tolerate deception at any level. But remember, you're not just witnessing this revelation period, you're participating in it. Every choice you make toward authenticity, every truth you speak despite discomfort, every shadow element you examine instead of projecting, all of this contributes to the disclosure field that's transforming our world. The seers saw this time as humanity's graduation from childhood into conscious adulthood, messy, painful, absolutely necessary. And they saw souls like you, those drawn to understand the deeper patterns, those willing to do the inner work, as essential for helping humanity navigate this transition with wisdom rather than destruction. The revelations will continue. More documents will be released, more secrets exposed, more institutions forced into transparency. But the real revelation happens within you, in your willingness to see clearly, speak truthfully, and love authentically. Welcome to the Great Disclosure. Welcome to humanity's awakening. The prophecies predicted you would be here for this moment. Now let's make sure you're here for it consciously.